Zuko. Wood Carter. That is the nastiest smelling toot I have ever smelt in my life.
Called out, Zuko.
Oh my God. Don't look at me with that cute little face. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome back to Hate Spinnerbait, the podcast where we hate spinnerbait, but we love that Barbie can be anything, and so can you. Yay. Hi, I'm Bethany. With me, as always, is Michael Ann. Michael Ann, 2023. How are you feeling about it? How are you? How's life?
I'm feeling positive. 2023 is going to be a good one. Yes. It has to be, because the last 3 were bad.
It is. Ain't that the truth? It's the year you get married. So you've got like a really big thing to look forward to. Since we just finished off the year with the last time we all talked to, we were doing Keeping the Moon. Funny story. So 2020, I'm obviously serving at my job. And every time it's my last table of the year, I like to tell them, like, oh, fun fact, you're my last table of the year. Like, congrats. So, of course, it was 2020, which was like a hellacious year. And I told my table that. And so I was like, I really hope this next year is a good one. And of course, 2021 was the year I was going to be getting married. And I had a lot of big plans coming up for that year. And I was like, I really need everything to go smoothly. And this lady was the sweetest person. And she left me like a little note. And I will never forget that. And she was like, 2021 is going to be so much better. It's going to be your year. And like, was it the best year ever? No. But it was a better year. So yeah, I don't know. 2023. I'm calling it 23, of course, famously Michael Jordan's basketball number. Everyone calls him the greatest of all time. So I'm calling 2023 the greatest year of all time.
I fucking hope so, is all I'm going to say about that. I need a break.
Yeah, it's been a time. I don't remember a time before like March of 2020, honestly.
No, my mind's blank from before that time.
Speaking of, wow, what a great segue, actually. So speaking of, because neither of us remember a time before March of 2020, we have entered a new millennium with Dreamland. I'm holding up the book like you all can see it. This is an audio recording. This is an audio format, but Michael Ann can see me holding up Dreamland. But yeah, we finished our last book of the 90s with Sarah Dessen. We've now entered her first book in A New Decade, A New Millennium, which is the year 2000. We all survived Y2K, as we discussed in a previous episode. We were all panicked. Well, Michael Ann and I were panicked. We made it, 2000. It did happen. And this was published, I believe I looked at the thing in September of 2000. So this was her first one of 2000. Tell us some fun facts about the year 2000. Oh, wait. We got to get in our time machine. Are we ready?
Here we are in the year 2000. The Twin Towers are still standing, and that's good. Last year that we weren't at war for the next 23 plus years, I think.
What a time.
How
innocent we all were.
We were.
Little did we know.
Maybe the world did end in Y2K and we're all just in like some sort of alternate like wormhole reality.
It might be.
So a couple popular things in the 2000s. Bring It On came out, which was just a life-altering movie, in my opinion.
God, such a good movie. I quote that to this day. True story.
It's so good. Miss Congeniality is another good one that came out. We love Sandra.
We love Sandra.
And Charlie's Angels.
Also iconic. I'm literally wearing an E.T. and sweatshirt right now, so it goes without saying that I'm obsessed with Drew Barrymore. And let me tell you, Drew Barrymore, just like a legend in the Charlie's Angels films. Thank you. A legend in everything.
And everything.
That was such a good, I mean, Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, like they were all like top of their game at that time, like very big names. And I mean, still very big names to this day. I love that Cameron Diaz just kind of disappeared. Good for her, honestly. Like she made her money and now she's like living her life. Mad respect. Drew Barrymore and Cameron Diaz, still very, very good friends to this day. And also good for them. Again, the power of female friendship. We love it.
We love it. I have Drew Barrymore's home collection. I have her coffee pot. I enjoy it.
I love her. Yes. I just bought the ET palette from her Makeup Flower by Drew makeup collection because obviously I needed it. And it is very lovely shimmers. I got some good compliments when I did a little eye makeup look the other day with that palette. So thanks, Drew.
Oh, girl. Also, Cameron Diaz married Benji Madden from Good Charlotte, which is my favorite band of all time. So yeah, fun facts. And
Good Charlotte, big into like we're getting into their reign. Speaking of,
yeah, their first album, their self-titled album, actually came out in 2000, I believe.
Yeah,
which is my favorite album of all time, and I'm gonna look that up just to make sure I don't sound like an asshole. Good Charlotte. I need to know now.
We're getting into some like really good like emo / pop punk in the early 2000s.
Oh my gosh. Yep. 2000 was when their first album dropped. So big year. So a couple TV shows I wanted to talk about that were popular in 2000. Even Stevens, which I loved Even Stevens.
Yes.
Although Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
Not good.
That has not. Yeah. And it's like Shia, like he really was having a time and he was having such a renaissance. And then obviously now I'm like, yeah, it's some problematic, but yeah, but that's almost about that.
But Christy Carlson Romano is amazing. And I follow her on TikTok and Instagram, and she has podcasts where she talks about what it was like to be a child star back in that time period. But she's killing it. She looks great. So
yeah, she's like, I believe she lives in Austin now. She lives in Texas, like has kids, a husband. She's happy. She's healthy. She's talked about, like what being a child star can do to someone. And I'm happy that she, much like Drew Barrymore, made it to the other side and is doing very well for herself.
Agreed. As Told by Ginger. I don't know if you watched As Told by Ginger, but I loved it.
Oh, what is that?
It was a cartoon on Nickelodeon, I believe.
Okay. It
was very good. And the theme song was Macy Gray.
Oh, that's so 2000, and also that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. I'm so surprised I don't know this because I watch like nothing but Nickelodeon cartoons. Well, I mean, I watched like Disney Channel stuff as well, obviously at the time. But I'm amazed I don't know that because I watched and very vividly during that time. Like I would have been watching, all of those Hey Arnold's, all that kind of stuff, Rocket Power. So I'm really amazed I don't know this, but that one I must have missed that one somehow.
It was not as popular.
Yeah.
It's not as popular. And then finally, Gilmore Girls came out in the year 2000.
The most important thing that has ever happened.
The most important thing that has ever happened in the world.
In the history of life. Literally, maybe one of the most formative things I have ever watched, truly, I think.
100%. 100%.
Thanks to Michael Ann, I fell down a rabbit hole because she posted a Gilmore Girls Loungefly, which, if you know anything about me, you know that that's two things I love, Gilmore Girls and Loungeflies. And so I was like, oh my God. And so by the time I got on, they were all sold out. There was like 5 different versions and wallets and literally all gone. And they were all so cute. And I was like, I'll take any of them. And they were all sold out. So it wasn't meant to be for me, and that's fine. But then I just was looking at everything else that they like had for sale. And I'm like, I need this shirt. I need this. I need this. I did not know that any of this existed. And now I do. And I want all of it. So, my bank account is a little mad at you, Michael Ann, but my heart is very happy with you.
I need the Dozie's Market mug. I need that
so
mug.
Good. It's so good.
Oh, so I've been watching Gilmore Girls long enough where my crush on Jess Mariano has developed into a crush on season 1 Luke Danes. Season 1 Luke Danes is very attractive. Wow.
He's an attractive man.
He is. I was like, I like see him in his little flannels, and I'm like, okay, Lorelai, what are you doing with Max Medina when you have that?
Seriously, okay? And no offense to Max, but like, come on. Luke was right there. And like, you could tell obviously he liked you. And yeah, this little backwards baseball cap. God, what a legend.
Grumpy demeanor, but secretly a ball of love.
I'm a sucker for that. Always.
Me
Always
too.
a sucker for that. God.
Oh, so
Luke and Lorelai. I actually had 7th grade, so a little after 2000, but we're still in the early 2000s reign. So obviously peak Gilmore Girls time. We had little twin eggs for, in home ec, you have to do the little like eggs or whatever that you like have as your baby. And so we named them Luke and Lorelai.
Aw. First of all, I did not know that was a real thing that schools actually did. I thought that was a TV show. I thought that was a trope.
Finally, I found one that my school, like, because I'm always like, that's not a real thing. That had to be a TV show thing. And you're like, no, I did that in high school, or no, my school did that. And finally, I found one that you guys didn't do that. Oh, yeah, we definitely, me and my sisters, we all had to do it. It was so annoying because you had to pinprick the little egg and the yolk would drip out very, very slowly because you couldn't kill the, shell part. So a little tiny pin poke, you would blow in it to make it go a little faster, and slowly it would drip out. You'd lay it overnight to dry out, and then the next day you could make a little face on it, and we put little hair on it, and then you had to do it for a week. We did do that in our home ec class, yes.
I went to Catholic school, so that's probably why we didn't do it.
They were like, we don't even want you to think about baby.
No, they were like, don't even.
Jesus would never allow that.
Okay. So other popular things that happened, Bush versus Gore.
Oh, yes.
If you want more information on that, I recommend the You're Wrong About episode about that whole situation because it's crazy and it will get you nice and angry.
Oh, all riled up.
Brad and Jen got married, and so did Angelina and Billy Bob.
Oh, that was a phase.
That really was. The vials of blood. It's too much.
So weird.
So weird. And then finally, the first illegal song download service, Napster, is created.
Yes. Which that guy's kind of a tool, but it really started a whole, I don't know.
Who
started a whole
Napster?
thing. Sean Parker, which I only know because, again, my love for The Social Network. Justin Timberlake's character.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that guy's a tool. But I mean, thanks for your contribution, sir, to the cause of, I don't know, kind of making downloadable music a thing. And then we all had to do LimeWire for years, where you would get the, you thought you were downloading a song, and instead you would get the, I did not have sexual relations with that woman clip over and over. Why? Why was that a thing on LimeWire? But I'm sure we all got it.
I downloaded so many illegal things on LimeWire. There was an episode of Degrassi that was illegal in the United States because it was about abortion. And I downloaded that episode and I watched it, and it did radicalize me. I've been pro-choice ever since.
They were right to ban it.
They were right to ban it because you'd be pro-choice if you watched that episode, is all I'm going to say.
I have seen that episode, and it is a good episode. We're recommending episodes on abortion. Friday Night Lights also did a really great episode that they got a lot of flack for. And that was years later, and it was still on network TV. We can't talk about it, taboo. But great episode of television. Thank you and good day.
Interesting. I'm going to have to start watching that show. You've sold me.
It's so good. So good.
I also, since this book is a little bit different than her past 3 that we've read, it's a little bit more serious. The themes are a little more serious. I don't know what else to say about it. I wanted to talk about the book a little bit. On Sarah Desson's website, She has a little in Sarah's words, and I'm just going to read it. It's a little long, but I think it's worth it. So she says, even while I was writing it, I knew Dreamland was different. It had a lot of the elements of the other books, but something kept pulling it deeper to a place that for me as a writer was really challenging. Originally, the story of Caitlin and Rogerson was in another novel I'd written, one that turned out to be mostly terrible. But then on Christmas Day of 1997, I was reading a book and the word Dreamland used in a simple sentence jumped out at me. It just had this image of a mother standing in a bedroom door in silhouette saying something about seeing you in Dreamland, and the story started to fall together. I picked the parts about Caitlin and Rogerson from the other book and shaped a story around them, adding in Cass and her story as well as the other subplots of the book. It was very slow going. I wasn't teaching that semester, and I wrote every day, really taking my time. There were scenes that were really hard to write, and some days I just had to go into another room, close my eyes for a few seconds to get my bearings. It's hard to create a character like Caitlin on the page and then systematically break her down to nothing before you can begin to build her up again. I think that's why I relied so much on the humor in Dreamland. And then she just kind of talks about how she's glad that this book had a good reception, and she wasn't intending on writing a story about domestic violence, but she did. She did. She says, for me, the book was always about Caitlin, about suddenly having to find your way when someone has always led the way for you before. It's not always easy, but she finds it can be done. Sarah Dessen was the recipient of the 2017 Margaret A. Edwards Award, honoring her work, including Dreamland, Keeping the Moon, Just Listen, The Truth About Forever, Along for the Ride, What Happened to Goodbye, and This Lullaby. That award is named in honor of the late Margaret A. Edwards, a pioneer in providing library services to young adults. So, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to give you a background on, just Sarah Dessen's process and thought process while writing this book and how she won an award for this and many others. But I think she could have probably won an award for this one alone, in my opinion.
Seriously.
And
yeah, this is, I would say, we've discussed before, and we'll discuss a lot over the next few weeks when we're going through it, probably the hardest read. But I also think the most important read. Like, if I'm recommending Sarah Dessen to someone who's never read their novels, I'd probably recommend one that's like a little lighter. But I would put this in conversation and be like, but if you want to read, I think, like, her most important work, it's this for me, like, hands down.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we will also include some resources for domestic violence and dating abuse if you need them in the information about the episode.
Yes. And yeah, we, at the start of every episode, we're also going to go ahead and give a trigger warning, since we will be discussing very potentially triggering topics, such as, of course, abuse. And on Instagram, if you follow us, if you're looking for the new episodes, Mike Lamb has already, I saw, posted one, but I'm sure every episode will also have a warning. But so both at the beginning of every episode vocally and in the posts that we make, we'll always make sure to warn everyone, take care of yourselves. Like I said, I think this is a very important thing to read, even though I do find it very difficult. But obviously, if this is, you have to skip the next couple of weeks, we totally understand. And we'll see you on the next novel. Take care of yourselves out there. Yeah, we're gonna try to keep it in our normal light banterish way, but I'm sure there's gonna be some seriousness. This particular, episode, we're not even getting that deep into, I mean, obviously, as per usual, we're only reading the first few chapters. And I was saying right before we hit record, I was like, oh, like, we're not even getting into the Rogerson of it all yet. And it's already just depressing. Like, it's already depressing. And we're not even getting into, like, the really meat and terrible bits of it. We did, since we decided, starting with Keeping the Moon, that we were going to try our best to read the dedications. Everything. That seems like a good place to start. And this dedication alone is just, I think, very deeply moving. So this one says, for Bianca Idia, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, I'm so sorry, Ashley, Hannah, Gretchen, Leah, and Charlotte, who have always told me their stories, and Jay, who is still listening to mine. I'm grateful to my agent, Leah Feldman, for seeing me through, Michael and Mary Inglis for support and spirit, and my parents, Alan and Cynthia Dessen. I think that's maybe the first time I've ever learned their names, who survived my lost years and like me lived to tell. Thank you. So yeah, just in the dedication, I'm like, oh geez, deep.
Yeah, I would love to know. I would love to know more about her lost years.
Yeah, me too. I mean, if she is, of course, willing to tell, but that was like, wow, that's wow. That's really, but yeah. And I think it is important that everyone, you know, again, if they're willing, does share their story. And I like that so many people clearly talked to Sarah and she worked from her own experience with certain things here on this novel. And, you know, every time someone tells their story, it does like help you feel a little less alone. So that's always great. But again, obviously only if, you know, like she was thanking them because, you know, obviously it's not her place to have, you know, been privy to information, but those people were down to share. I told a friend the other night, actually, because she was talking about this new guy she was kind of talking to, and there's something she was a little worried about with him. And she was comparing it to a past relationship, which ended kind of traumatically. And she's like, well, I was a fool in that one. And I was like, well, yeah, because no one knows. And I was like, no one thinks that they're going to be in a relationship where they are emotionally or physically abused until you are, and you don't know the signs until you've done it. And I was like, I have very strong boundaries now, but before I was in an emotionally abusive relationship, I was like, I didn't know. I'm like, nobody knows until I was like, unfortunately, it's one of those lessons. Like sometimes you have to learn the hard way. And I really hope for future people that they don't, but yeah, you don't know until you know. And you are not the fool in this situation. Trust me, it is the person who is doing those things to you.
100%. And one really, so I had a new therapist this year who I really loved, and I'm devastated that I had to stop seeing her because I moved out of New York into South Carolina, so she couldn't see me anymore. Sad. But she told me, you know, one thing that really stuck with me is even if you know that this person is like, has like a shady past or something, it's not your fault if you trust them and then get abused by them. Like she said, you could walk up to somebody who had a t-shirt on that said, I'm a serial killer, and it still wouldn't be your fault that you were murdered. It is 100% the person who is doing the actions. If you had enough love and trust in your heart to, you know, trust somebody who wasn't good to you, that's on them, not you. So.
Very well. Yeah. Man, that is a good one. I like that. She's spot on.
She is. She's lovely.
Spot on. She seems like a lovely person. Yeah.
I hope she's thriving.
Same. I hope all of us are just thriving here in 2023. This is our time, y'all.
This is it. This is our year.
We're gonna do so good. So yeah, we actually kind of have a little straight after the dedication. It goes straight into almost like a prologue. It doesn't really say that it is a prologue or a preface or anything, but there's just a couple of pages until we get into part 1, chapter 1, which is entitled Cass. So just to break down what the prologue is about, essentially, it starts, my sister Cass ran away the morning of my 16th birthday, which rude. Like, I understand that you were going through something, Cass, and you were trying to do what was right for you because you have not waited a couple of days. That's all I'm going to say. But all right. She did leave her a present, though, at least. So she basically, Caitlin, our main character of this novel, wakes up and her parents have found the letter that she left, that her elder sister left under the coffee pot, essentially. And it just says, Mom and Dad, I want you to know first that I'm sorry about this. Someday I hope I'll be able to explain it well enough so that you'll understand. Please don't worry. I'll be in touch. I love you both, Cass. So yeah, so she has run off and her parents are obviously freaking out. Her neighbors, which is Boo and Stuart Connell, which we kind of find out are very like new wavy, hippie people, which is not at all like her parents, but they get along because of proximity, essentially, because they're neighbors. So they're on their way over to basically have a lovely like birthday breakfast for Caitlin, when of course it's kind of interrupted because Cass has gone missing. And already we get right here on page 3, this is probably the fastest title drop in any of the novels we have read so far. So basically her dad is calling the police or whatever, and Caitlin has a memory of when she was little. And so she says, I had a sudden memory pop into my head. My mother standing in the doorway of Cass in my childhood's room, back when we had twin beds and pink wallpaper. She would always kiss us, then stand in the doorway after turning off the light, her shadow stretching down the length of the room between us. She was always the last thing I tried to see before I fell asleep. See you in Dreamland, she'd whisper, and blow us a kiss before shutting the door quietly behind her. So yeah, page 3. So Mama, what is her last name? O'Corin, I think. Is that how you pronounce that? That's how I've been pronouncing it in my head. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Is the one who gets the name drop in this very, very early.
I like how it just kind of goes right into the story without any heading. Yeah. My brain is not working today, y'all. It has been a long week. I hope y'all enjoyed your Christmas. Woo. I like how it doesn't have a heading like prologue, chapter 1, whatever. I like how it just kind of goes right into it because it gives you that feeling of like, I just woke up and I'm still getting my bearings and my sister's missing. Like it does give you that sense of like, wait, everything has changed. Everything is different. And then we do kind of start to see some hints of why Cass might have run away. One of the first things her mother says is she's supposed to be at Yale in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that is the first of 15 times that we hear them bring up Yale.
Oh man, they're more obsessed with Yale than Emily and Richard Gilmore.
Yes. They are like, something. This is the most important thing is she's going to Yale. And we kind of see throughout the next couple chapters that Cass was like the perfect child. And as we know from popular culture, it's not easy to be the perfect child. Eventually you break. Rory Gilmore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely some Rory Gilmore vibes off of her. And I think she is 100% the definition of the eldest sister, I don't want to say like trope. That's not a trope. It's a real thing that people have, like when you're the eldest sister, and it's like very anxiety inducing because you're the first and you have to set the example and whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole, song, an Encanto about it. You all know it. You know what I mean.
You all know that song from Encanto.
You all know that one. So the pressure and the breaking and it's hard. It's hard being an older sister and stuff.
I liked that movie. That movie was cute.
A very good movie and very good songs. And that's I've seen so many people that are older sisters be like, oh my God, like what I feel that was put into a song, and I'm so happy for them that they have that. I can't personally relate because I'm not an older sister, but I could imagine. I mean, I've heard my eldest sister Megan complain before about it, so I can imagine. Again, I just wanted to be known. It's not always easiest being the younger sister either. I feel for Caitlin here as well, but yeah, obviously Cass is, I think, has a lot of pressure. Some of it self-imposed pressure, but. What is that post? I've seen it like all Twitter, Tumblr, whatever, any social media you might have. That's like the gifted to adult with anxiety pipeline or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's Cass right there. It's like, yeah. Oh, she was such a good girl when she was in elementary school. She was so bright. And now she's like an adult with anxiety. And it's like, yeah, because that's what we were all such good little kids because we were anxious.
Mm-hmm. We were terrified.
Yeah, we were terrified of disappointing anyone ever.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
But yeah, I did like here on page 5, which is kind of the end of this whole. We've waken up like literally the first few pages, like you were saying, it just does do such a good job of like setting the anxiety about the situation. Yeah, like she wakes up, this is happening, and like when I was reading the first few pages, I was like, God, like this really is stressful. Like this person's coming in the door, dad's on the phone. Like she just writes it in such a way that you like feel the frenzy that they're all feeling. But she basically bumped her head when she woke up because she tripped over her present, which her sister left her. So she, basically goes into the room and opens it up, and it's a dream journal. But yeah, so she says, I took it into my room and sat down on my bed. In the mirror over my bureau, I could see my face was scratched from where I'd hit the light switch, the skin around it a bright pink. No one had even noticed. And it's like, yep. And again, like the important thing here is that her sister is missing. And obviously she is very distraught about that herself. And it sounds like they had a pretty good relationship and she very much looked up to her sister. But it's kind of like, it's her birthday. She woke up, it was supposed to be a good day. And it seems like a lot of times she is living in Cass's shadow. And I just love that line. Like, it's a, you know, again, that kind of showing that telling, like we're just talking about a scratch here, but you know, it's so much more than a scratch. I think a lot of times no one even notices Caitlin kind of in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like that was probably, well, I don't know. I'm just making a prediction. I'm a spoiler free. I read this like 500 times when I was a kid, but I haven't read it in adult life. And I feel like it's going to be kind of one of those things where Caitlin has been kind of overshadowed by Cass forever. So I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Chapter 1. So we kind of start off a little bit of a memory that when Caitlin was born, Cass was 6. They were fighting over a shovel, essentially. And she's kind of saying, as these stories go, like they don't really have memories of it because they were super little, but it's a story they were told so many times that now it seems like it's a, you know, like a memory that's theirs. And Boo, who again is the hippie neighbor, happened to take a picture of the incident. She ends up having to go get stitches. Caitlin does. And so she has like a little scar that she barely notices, but she says that like Cass always kind of like noticed it and would like rub her finger over it, and in a way that almost was like she felt guilty. And Caitlin never like, you know, blamed her because she was like, we were kids. It was kind of both our faults, whatever. But so that's just kind of a little memory that she's talking about. She talks about how both Cassie and her got her names, which is kind of Boo is responsible for both of them, it sounds like, because Boo suggested Cassandra. In Greek mythology, she was a seer, a prophet. And so she ends up going with that, which of course because it is Greek mythology, she does kind of have a tragic ending. And then by the time she came along, my mom and Boo are best friends. Boo's real name was Catherine, but she hated it. So I was named Caitlin, the Irish version. So she says that Cass's name was always cooler, but to be named for Boo was something special. So I never complained. So then she kind of is talking a little bit about Cass, and like you were saying, how she was kind of a bit of an overachiever, a bit of the quote unquote perfect kid. She was Judy body president. She was like a state champion soccer player. She was involved in everything. I mean, obviously she was a great student and well-rounded. She got into Yale after all. Boy, do they love mentioning it. Which is like such like this mother. It's like, yeah, like her daughter is missing, and like that's what she's upset about. But as we kind of see, like her whole life is her kids, and like her whole life was Cass and her schedules and this and the other thing. And she like, I'm like, are you more upset that your daughter is missing or that your daughter is no longer going to go to Yale? Because it kind of seems like it might be the Yale thing.
Yeah. Speaking of the mother, first thing I want to mention is that they live in Lakeview. So shout out that we're getting some Dessin continuation here. On page 10 here, it says, the shovel was destroyed. My mother, already a nervous case, wouldn't let us leave the house or play with anything not plush or stuffed for about 6 months. So we have a very nervous mother. And as you said, like she's really, her whole life is like Cass's life. Her whole life is Cass's schedule, her games, her grades, everything. I think mom is going to be an interesting character to keep an eye on during this. And I did also really like that she was named Caitlin, the Irish version. I thought that was like a really nice detail.
Yes. I very much. I am very intrigued by Boo and Stuart and Caitlin's kind of relationship with them and her family, I guess, relationship with them overall. It's funny. we took obviously a couple week break, and we've been, rereading Sarah Dessen novels where it's like daughter with mommy issues every book essentially, and we're here, we're back at it, we're here, baby, new year, same mommy issues. But I was like, yeah, I'm taking a little break for recording, holidays, crazy work schedule, whatever. And I've been watching, me and everyone else on planet Earth, been watching Wednesday. I'm not finished yet, so no spoilers, everyone.
Oh my God.
But, I'm almost finished. I have like 2 episodes to go, but I've been watching that. And like first episode in, I'm like, oh, so I'm taking a break from reading some Sarah Dessen to watch a show about a girl with mommy issues. And I was like, here we are again.
Here we are again.
I'm thoroughly enjoying the show so far. I hope the last 2 episodes don't ruin that for me, but I will say, okay, good. I'm excited to watch. I will say I was intrigued that they made the mommy issues thing, because that's not really like an Addams Family thing. Like that's never really been a thing in the past. And at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I think the later episodes have had a good payoff for it. So I'm okay with it. But at first I was like, no, like, I mean, yes, Wednesday and Pugsley always kind of had a love-hate relationship, very much so. But like the parents and the kids, like they all like loved each other. Like that was kind of the whole shtick of it. But anyways, I digress. Back to Lakeview.
Yeah, I really liked that. Like I didn't think I was gonna like it either at first, because I was like, this is not really the dynamic. But I did end up really liking it. And I think, I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones is beyond just like an icon. And fun fact, she is a white woman from Wales.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
I know. It's like every time I forget that. I know. Every time I see her, I'm like, oh yeah, she's just like this Welsh woman. Not just, sorry, people from Wales, y'all are great. I love how much you hate the English. Keep on keeping on. But yeah, I'm just like, oh yeah, she's like a white lady from Wales. Like you don't think that when you think of her, but that is what she is. Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly what episode it was, maybe episode 4 or 5 or something, when it's like parents weekend, I think it really played off well, the whole mother-daughter dynamic thing. So yes, I got on board with it. I did get on board with it. But yeah, this mother in this book is like part of me. I mean, we'll get to it here, I guess, in a couple of chapters. So I guess no like spoilers, but part of me is like, her parents do really seem to care, which is nice. Like certain things that they were talking, like reminded me of like growing up, like my parents, like, there's 3 kids and I was definitely the least athletic of the 3. And, but I grew up, and I'm not saying this in like a bad way at all. I don't want it to come off that way. Like I grew up in gymnasium because like my parents would not miss their daughters doing a thing. Like you had to be at the game. And it was so weird to me when I got into high school. And a lot of my friends played soccer, and I would like go watch their games and whatnot. And none of their parents ever came. And I was like, that's so weird. Like my parents would never miss like a sporting event that we did. So part of me is like, oh, like it's not like they care. They're invested in their kids' lives, and that's great. But also you can tell that like the mom is maybe like a little too invested, maybe a little too pushy. And that's obviously can be a little stressful and cause someone to break and run away potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting that right after we get kind of a little brief explanation of who Cass was as a person, all the shit that she did. And I mean, even like staging a sit-in to protest the firing of a popular English teacher for assigning Toni Morrison's Beloved, which like freaking racists. Toni Morrison is such an important author that everybody should read. But anyway, I digress. We see that she says, there were only 2 times I can remember ever seeing Cass really depressed. One was after the Stalker State Championship sophomore year when she missed the goal. They could have won it all. Again, that is like pointing to her need to be perfect and her need to do everything she can to succeed.
Right.
And then the second time was at the end of her junior year when her first real boyfriend dumped her. She cried for weeks straight, refusing to go anywhere. So it sounds like she has some mental health issues that maybe weren't getting addressed because of her like perfectionism, because of the way that she was able to like succeed in every aspect. They kind of looked past that. And I think it's nice to see here that she reached out to Boo and kind of got a different way of coping with this kind of stuff, like with Buddhism and like spiritual stuff. I don't think that's like a cure, but it's helpful, I guess, to go away from perfectionism and move more towards like finding just like peace within yourself, which is very important. And it says basically Cass was like never herself again after that boyfriend dumped her.
Yeah.
She just kept going through the motions, but she wasn't really in it, which is, yeah.
Yeah, I think she was looking for something. And obviously I feel like she probably didn't feel comfortable enough going to her parents because it was like, well, you got into Yale and we're going to get you a cake for that. And like, you're fine. You're a homecoming queen and you're awesome. And it's like, yeah, she's going through the motions because it's like, well, I can't let them down. That's what they want out of me. But it's like, you can tell she clearly must not want that. And and she's kind of going through a thing. And yes, it's nice that Boo at least was there, that she had someone she could kind of go to for support. But yeah, it's like clearly, Zen Buddhism wasn't quite enough to get her back to where she wanted or, where she needed to be. Although I'm sure Zen Buddhism works for a lot of people. But I don't. But yeah.
I saw this like post on Twitter or something that said like children who don't receive the love that they needed growing up try to find it in different areas, and that's how a lot of people can find themselves in like bad relationships back to back. I think that's kind of what was happening here. It was like she was getting, she was obviously loved, she was obviously supported, but it wasn't in the way that she needed it. So she was like looking for it with Jason Packer and now this new guy that she met at the beach and presumably ran off with, Adam.
Right.
It's like she's looking for someone to love her as she needs to be loved. And her parents, unfortunately, just can't do that because they're not taking the time to like understand what she actually needs.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. Yeah. And when she leaves the note, like at the beginning, and she's like, I'll be in touch, so it's not like she's going to go completely AWOL. I mean, she kind of has, but she, did promise to be in touch. And she was like, I hope you'll understand one day. But it's like, yeah, like she felt like she had to run away instead of like basically telling her parents, like, I want to go be with this guy and not go to Yale, because she knew that like that wouldn't work. Like her parents wouldn't, stand for that.
Yes. Let me get some information. She met this guy, Adam. He works for like a Jerry Springer type show. And so he's a little bit older. I believe she said he's 21 and she's 18, which bordering on a line there with that one.
Yeah.
But I guess we can move forward.
I guess we'll let it pass.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that they act like she's dead. Like her mom acts like she is literally dead, and it's like she's not dead. She just doesn't want to.
And if you were like calmer about things, she probably would be in touch more often. But you're like, so, because like part of me was like, and Caitlin kind of says that, like the way that they are talking about her is almost like she's like, I started talking about her in the past tense, like she's dead. And obviously she's not, like she's still alive and well. And I am thinking like, oh God, like if you had a kid and you just woke up one morning and they were just like, wrote you a letter that they were gone. Like, I understand the panic. Like in a sense, I was like, I get it that they'd be panicky. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like if you guys were like calmer about things and like weren't like putting so much pressure on her, like she probably would be in contact with you. And it would be like, because, the mom kind of says like, oh, she would have been gone now anyways. Like she would be at Yale, but it's different because like you had been like, oh yeah, my kid's at college. I know exactly where they are. I know that in theory they're safe. Because again, spoiler alert, everyone, bad things can also happen to you at college. But Yeah, so she's, like, I guess it would be like, oh, we know where she is and she'll be in regular contact with us. And there's things like parents' weekends where we can come and visit her. And, and now it's like, we don't know when we're going to see her again. And that would be devastating, obviously, if you didn't know when you're going to see your child again. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, if y'all would just like calm down and not be trying to force her to come home, you probably could still have a good relationship with your daughter and she would contact you,
Right.
But you're not. So
exactly. Yeah, we kind of get some information about when she met Adam. She came home and she would talk to him every night on the phone, being all mushy and gushy. And Caitlin would be kind of like grossed out by it and being like, ew. And Caitlin was like, oh, someday this will happen to you. I'm in love. Everything's great. La, 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 la.
It does seem like she fell real hard real quick. I'm not sure about the validity of this relationship, but go off, I guess, girl.
Yes. Probably not great, but we'll see what happens with it. I don't remember, to be honest.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Same.
Yeah, and then we kind of see that Caitlin like was never really as good as Cass and other features. Like she has a 3rd place ribbon from horseback riding. She got the B honor roll, and she tried to do figure skating, but was not good. But Cass was always there cheering her on. It didn't matter how good she was. Cass was going to be there supporting her. And then it says, to be honest, a part of me had been looking forward to Cass going off to Yale at the end of the summer. I thought her leaving might actually give me some growing room, a chance to finally strike out on my own. But this changed everything. I'd always counted on Cass to lead me. She was out there somewhere, but she'd taken her own route. And for once I couldn't follow. This time she'd left me to find my own way. And this is another theme that we kind of see continuously throughout Sarah Dessen. Like in that summer, we saw this too, where we have like an older sister who has been guiding her younger sister throughout life. And when she goes off and does her own thing, like Ashley got married and moved out, and now Cass has run away, it kind of leaves the younger sister like, wait, shit, am I supposed to be my own person? How am I supposed to do this?
Right.
Which is definitely relatable as the younger sister. Yes. I was like always just trying to do everything my siblings wanted me to do and what I thought in my head they wanted me to do, which really wasn't the case. Yeah. And then I was like, wait. And then I'm like 27 and I'm like, wait, I don't have like my own identity or like my own anything because I've just been like mirroring them for my entire life. What am I doing?
I feel like I may have steered in the opposite direction. I mean, my sisters and I have a lot in common, like a lot in common, and we have a lot of like shared interests, but there's also a ton of things that I don't know if like purposely, like I think maybe subconsciously, I was like, I'm going to do this because I want to be different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I did it purposely, but it was just like, oh, like this could be my thing. Because when you are, the youngest of 3 girls, it's like every teacher I had, everything, I was Megan and Sarah's little sister. And I think I like wanted my own identity a little bit, especially because I happen to look a lot like my older sister, Megan, which is not a bad thing. Everyone loves Megan. I love Megan. She's a great person. But I was called Megan half the time in class. And I was like, that's not me. And so I think to a certain point, I was like, I want, like, my sisters both did volleyball and basketball. I wanted nothing to do with that because it was like, well, I'll never be, and, I think Cass being like, I'll never be as good as my older sister. Like, I felt that. And it's not like, I make it clear, like, anyone put that pressure on me. It was like this weird self-inflicted pressure I put on myself. And I was like, well, I'll never be as good as them at that. So I'm going to do my own thing. And then, then like, I can't be compared to them in that regard, So it's like, well, which ironically kind of comes up here that Caitlin ends up going into cheerleading, which same. And neither of my sisters did that. So I didn't have to worry about any of my cheer coaches knowing my sisters because it was like, well, they didn't do that. So I will just actually be called Bethany here.
Oh, yeah. It's such a different perspective for both of us because my siblings are like way older than me. My sisters are 15 and 13 years older than me. So it's like, we didn't have the same teachers. We didn't have the same anything. We did but my siblings are all 2 years apart and they all grew up together and they all have the same friends and they all had like the same like life and they went through things together. So I was always trying to like be them because I always wanted to be like in their clique, but it was like, I'm a totally different generation. So it's like, impossible to really. Plus, they grew up in Boston. I grew up outside of Boston. Blah blah blah. A bunch of differences.
I will say, to this day, I like am not good at doing my hair because I had an older sister for that. I was like, I never had to learn how to like French braid my hair. My sister did that for me. So yeah, that was a struggle. I was like in college, like YouTubing how to do a fishtail braid because I legitimately didn't know because my sister always did it for me. And I like wasn't living with her. And I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Oh my God. I don't know how to do a fishtail braid either.
It's like not that complicated, but somehow it's so tedious. Like I love a fishtail braid, but like doing it on your own head is the most tedious thing for some reason because it's just a 2-strand braid. Like that's not difficult in theory, but like the way you have to do it, oh my God, it's excruciating. But yeah, that's what older sisters are for. They just braid your hair for you.
Yes. Yeah. My sister did my makeup a lot. My sister Erica did my like makeup and my hair a lot, and my sister Carrie like taught me how to fight.
They both brought something to the table.
They did. They really
in their
did.
Own way. I will say too, my mom, big fan of the show, always listens. Hi, Mom. So both of us are baby of our family, so that was kind of nice because my mom, I think sometimes when I like had those moments, as still now as a grown adult woman, I have those moments where I just like put this weird, one of my biggest things, and I know my rational brain knows this, but my weird emotional anxious brain does not know this, is I have this fear in my life that because I'm the youngest of 3 girls, that all of our like family friends are bored by the time they get to my stuff. It's like, we did a bridal shower for your sisters. We went to your sisters' weddings. Oh, like a baby shower. We've done that with like whatever. That like when I feel like I ever reach a milestone, it's like, yeah, we've done that. And like no one cares. And I know that that's not true. Like logically, I know that that's not true. But in my head, that's like in my emotional head, that's how I feel. And so my mom, she's the youngest of 5. Like she was also baby of her family. So she like gets the baby of the family struggle. So that was always really nice growing up, is like having someone who was like, no, I get it. Like I was youngest, but she had the exact opposite issue that I had in school, which in my school, my siblings were good kids. I was a good kid too. But yeah, I put this weird pressure on myself that I had to be as good, if not better than them. And my mom had the opposite problem, in which all of her older siblings were not good kids. And she was a good kid. So her teachers already had this like very like, they saw Minion and they were like, oh, you're, Paul's sister, you're Bill's sister, you're Janet's sister, whatever. And because they were like the little troublemakers in class, and my mom was a good kid. And then she had to like prove to her teachers that she was like, no, I'm not like them, whatever. So my mom used to be like, well, at least, like your teachers have good thoughts about your family name before you enter their classroom. And I'm like, true story. I do have that going for me, I guess.
That's so funny.
Oh, poor mama.
Poor mom.
Yeah. I guess what we're trying to say here is no matter if you're the younger or the older one, everyone has their struggles.
Yes.
But
yes.
This podcast is very much run by younger siblings. So sorry if we're going to relate more to the younger sibling problems.
So chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Here we go. After our 20-minute family diatribe, here we go. Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. I
like that.
I think I picked that up from my boss, who's from the Midwest. So I feel
oh
like
my God, that does sound like such a Midwest thing to say. Oh, that's good. I like it. So chapter 2. The next morning. So we start, it's interesting. Like the first couple of chapters are very like condensed in like a small bit of time. She basically wakes up. She got that dream journal from Cass. So she wakes up that morning and she says, August 18th, I wrote the top of the page, nothing last night, and you're still gone. Which, wow, that's depressing. Again, why did you have to leave on your sister's birthday? Like, no. Consideration. No consideration. That's not nice. We learned a little bit about her father and how he's the dean of students at the university. Her dad, I kind of like love her dad a little bit, even though obviously I think he's one of the reasons that the kids feel a little bit of pressure. But so she talks a little bit about him, and then she is talking about how when she was little, so she's saying she kind of like sees Boo and Stuart. She says when she was little that when she gets into her room, she'd always sit on my bed and wish that Boo and Stuart were my parents. They never had kids of their own. And it just kind of sounds like, again, like her family is very like traditional, strict. Like she even says at one point, like her mom is very conservative and her mom is very, again, invested, at least it sounds like in Cass's life. And I think that Boo and Stuart are a little bit more like laid back, lovey-dovey, whatever. So she kind of has this little, wish when she was little, at least, that she could have like had them as parents. So our latest artist, that's definitely seems to be a trend too in these novels in Sarah Dessen land, that Stuart is basically he's an art professor. And of course, does his own art as well. And then we learn a little bit later on that Boo is a women's studies professor. So her dad and Boo and Stuart all work at the university, which again, taking from her own life, I guess, since Sarah Dessen's parents worked at a university. So that would make sense that she would understand that. So yeah, basically she just goes over to Boo and Stuart's and they're kind of asking, how is everything? Any news? How are your parents? And of course, like we were saying, her mom is basically acting like, Cass has died. And then here on the top of page 20, this is kind of what we were discussing. But it says, Boo nodded, standing up and stretching her back. Well, that's a lot of pressure, being perfect, right? And it's like, yeah, this poor girl was bound to break.
Yeah.
She definitely had a lot going on her plate.
Yeah. And then she says, like, Boo says, I think it's harder for Cass than we realized. It's so easy to get caught up in what people expect of you. Sometimes you can just lose yourself. And if that's not the dang truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we kind of try to figure out, like, did Boo know that Cass was going? And she said no, and then we kind of learn about Rena, Caitlin's best friend, who is a lot different than her mom. Marries for money, not for love. So she keeps getting remarried over and over again to richer and richer men that keep trying to win Rena over with endless exotic trips and all this material stuff. And at the same time, piling up a huge therapy bill because, of course. I also think it's funny that Stuart like continuously rides his bike into a clothesline. And he's like, I'm not going to move it. It's not the fault of the clothesline. It's about me respecting it as an obstacle. Sometimes he can be too much of a hippie.
That line, the second I was like, oh my God, he is such a hit. Like, yeah, he's something. Stuart is something. And then when she gets back home, this is when the phone call comes. And of course, everyone is frantic, which again, just calm the F down and maybe your daughter would come home. I'm just saying. Right. And this is Cass checking in for the first time. She basically just wants to let them know that she's okay, that she's happy, not to worry. And of course, her dad's just like, come home. Like, we're not mad, but just come home. Instead of being like, I don't know, like, we just want to listen to you. What's going on, Cass? Like, please just keep in contact with her, something like that. He, of course, just yells at her to come home. And the mom is just like frantically running down the stairs, trying to get to them. And that's basically how it ends. That the mom kind of finally gets to the phone and Cass hangs up because
obviously,
of course she does, because her dad is not, which again, I understand. He's under a lot of stress. I'm gonna, give dad a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, but come on, dude, that's not the way to have handled that phone call.
Right. And mom's screaming in the background. Like, I can tell you one thing. If my mom's screaming, I'm hanging up the phone. Yeah. And then she says, hey, Caitlin, I'm really sorry about your birthday. Don't cry. I love you. And it's like, you could have just waited until the day after her birthday and then you wouldn't have to apologize for shit.
It's not like your parents are shipping you off to Yale that day. Like, you had time. You had time. I don't know why that's the day that you picked. Like, I don't know why. I'm sure you're a lovely sister, Cass, but Jesus, that was not a cool move.
Seriously, the day before, the day after, literally any other day.
Any other day. Very 16 candles.
Very 16 candles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Molly
Why's it always got to be the sweet 16? Not fair, you know?
I know. I don't even remember mine.
I had a good 16th birthday overall. Thankfully, no drama. No one forgot it. And none of my sisters ran away. So I'm calling it a win.
I'm going to say it was the same for me, though I can't remember, but none of my siblings lived with me, so they couldn't have run away.
Boom. Solid.
So we're good.
We both survived it unscathed, and that's the important part, I think.
It sure is. So chapter 3.
Oh, here we go. Chapter 3. All right. So we're now in school. She started school, and they did figure out that the first call came from somewhere in New Jersey. So it does their theory that she ran away to be with this guy, Adam, who I believe lives in New York. That's where they filmed the Jerry Springer show. Mm-hmm. Is probably correct. If the phone call came from New Jersey, that she'd be in that area. Again, more of her mom kind of acting like Cass is dead. Like she kept her bedroom door shut. All of the Yale stuff was piled up in the bed waiting for her. She says, you know, like she was definitely taking it the hardest. It seems like her dad just kind of throws himself into work. She does mention that she did finally get her license and without comment was given the keys to Cass's car, which apparently she was going to inherit anyways because Cass wasn't taking it with her to Yale. But still now it's like a little awkward. It's like, oh, and here's your sister's car now that she's run away. But so she's talking about how her father threw himself into work. He really likes ties, and so they get him a lot of ties. I did like this bit where she says that if my mother was the emotion of our family, he was the fact keeper. He remembered everything. Caitlin, Christmas 1988, he'd say, smoothing his hand proudly over a tie I myself didn't even recognize. You had the chicken pox. And I just love that. Like, hi, and now my dog, well, not my in-laws' dogs are barking. It's Maggie and Misty. If you can hear them, I'm sorry.
Like, wow, that's a loud-ass Yorkie.
Yeah, right? It's the loudest Yorkie I've ever heard. I am currently in a house with 2 golden retrievers, so I apologize if you can hear them. They just wanted to say hi to y'all. So yeah, I love that her dad, like, they get him ties for everything. Father's Day, Christmas, birthday. And he remembers like each one and what it was. And that's adorable. And I also just wanted to note that I too had the chicken pox on Christmas when I was little. So I feel that struggle, Caitlin. I feel that struggle. Wow. Shout out to having the chicken pox. It was so bad I had it on my tongue. It was not pleasant.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing until obviously it happened to me.
Oh, I don't remember having the chicken pox, but I have a scar.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'd say I have a scar. Which eyebrow is it? This eyebrow. I have a scar on my eyebrow, and it was from having the chicken pox. At least that's what we assume. I don't know for certain, but I think it's because of that. Oh,
jeez.
That's a story I go with, anyways. But yeah. Oh, so they talk about essentially like the other thing my father loved besides ties and us was sports. And besides the ties thing, I think that's pretty much my dad. He loves the Florida Gators and his family. Like those are his interests essentially. And Gilmore Girls. Again, shout out to my dad. He is a big Gilmore Girls fan. But yeah, he just really, that's pretty much what he loves. And just speaking about like getting people the like same thing for every like holiday and birthday and stuff. Like my sisters and I pretty much just get him like Florida Gator stuff for every kind of event. And my dad has so many like baseball hats, so many. And we continuously still buy him new ones. And we do this thing every year on Christmas where we have to write like little hints to each other. And it's like a guessing game and you get an ornament. It's like a trophy. You win if you get the most. My nephew Sora, he's very proud of himself. He's getting very into it now at his age and very competitive. That one, he takes after his mother in that sense. And he has won it 2 years in a row now, so he's pretty proud of himself. But my dad is the worst guesser. Like, he will get something in a shirt box and be like, it's a toolkit. And you're like, it's in a shirt box. And it feels light. What do you think it is, Dad? It's a shirt. Like, it's going to be a Florida Gator shirt. But yeah, I loved this whole bit about her dad obviously is very into the basketball and football team. since essentially this university, the university that Sarah Destin always uses in her books is a play on UNC. I thought it was very funny that he liked the football team because let me tell you, no one at UNC really cares about the football team. So I was like, okay, I'm like, he's the one, I guess. No, they have fans. They've been doing all right for themselves last 3 years. They really have. At this time, though, in the late 90s and like going into 2000, I looked up their record today just in case, because at a bit later on in this chapter, they're talking about watching the game and he's saying like, though their offense looks good, but their defense needs work, whatever. And I was like, I don't think that UNC had a very good team in the late 90s / 2000. 2000, they did have a winning season. But when this book came out, it would have been during football season. So it wouldn't have been about that team because it would have way been written and published at this point. 99, they had a losing season. In fairness, the ACC was very difficult at that time. FSU was at the top of their game. They would have to play them every year. Virginia Tech, I think, was pretty good around that time. And this is where I lose Michael Ann. But for anyone out there who enjoys college sports as much as I do, I hope you all appreciated my deep dive into UNC's football because I just was like, interesting. I would have watching football.
I would have never thought to look that up. So I'm glad you did because I'm sure somebody will find that very interesting. I found it interesting. However, I've immediately forgotten.
This is my specialty. I read things like this and I'm like, how was UNC's football team that year? Because I doubt they were that good. And I Google it and I look it up. And Michael Ann's like, I would have never even thought of that.
No. Their
basketball team, I'm sure, was great because pretty much always have a pretty decent squad for that. It's what they're good at. If you ever have a chance, everyone, check out a game at the Dean Dome. It is a good time. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Oh, I did like, okay. So we're getting into, so learning a little bit about Dad, his loves, yeah. And she basically is saying that, but now Cass had done something to him, an intentional foul, illegal movement, the biggest of penalties. So she's basically saying, like she's now obviously messed up in his eyes. So we're back. She's been back in school for a week when Rena essentially is like, you should try for the cheerleading squad. And she's like, I really don't want to. And she was like, but that's one thing that like Cass never did. And she's like, yeah, because she was an athlete, which then Rena rightfully points out that cheerleading is a sport. And besides, you get to go to all the good parties. As a former cheerleader, I'll stand up for cheerleaders all day, every day. So yeah. And again, this is our second or our third Florida mention. We learned that Rena came from Boca Raton to live with stepdad number 2. And this is where we learn about the fact that her dad is kind of shitty and doesn't want anything. Okay, and this is what really upsets me is he runs a kid show. And like that's what's really depressing for her is she watches this man interact with children on a TV show, but he doesn't want to interact with her. And that is very depressing to me. Poor Rena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I can't imagine what that is like. She says, he just seemed like he'd be the perfect dad, and all I could think was that he hated me, but I still watched every day. I don't even know why. I'm like, this is where I read it. It wasn't Twitter. It was page 28. The love she wanted, she'd learn to look for elsewhere with mixed results. So we're seeing. It
wasn't Twitter. I think it wasn't Twitter. It was page 28. That's one of the best lines of this podcast. Crack me up. Oh, but yes, that is 100% accurate. Oh man, poor Rena. The whole line about like that he hated me, but I still watch every day. I don't even know why. It just really gutted me. It was so sad.
Yeah, that was killer. But then we see some really nice female friendship moment here. She's saying that her mom kind of didn't want her to hang out with Rena because Rena seems kind of like loose, kind of dresses in a certain way. Typical mom. I feel like my mom would have said something like that. Although I was the one that was dressing inappropriately. So she just said it to me instead. But she says here, I never missed having a wide, thick circle of girlfriends. Rena was more than enough. We were comfortable with each other's flaws and weaknesses, so we stuck together and kept to ourselves. I love that. I love that Sarah Dessen always has like her characters always have like one or two friends, you know, that she's not like 10 friends deep, which I really like because that's very relatable to me.
Yeah.
Very relatable.
Same. I'm not like the life of a party, but I do enjoy having my little circle, my little people.
My little gang.
Yeah, so we're going to cheerleading tryouts, which again, Rena's into, Caitlin is not as into, but they run into Chelsea, who was the homecoming queen runner-up, which of course the homecoming queen was her sister. So I think Chelsea is a little jealous of Cass, and it's kind of the rumor mill of the town is that, of course, that she has run away. So they have a little confrontation at like tryout check-in. Can I just say that as someone who actually was a cheerleader, the way tryouts are depicted since we mentioned Bring It On earlier, and then everything about the way tryouts are here, it's always like the captain and like a bunch of other people make decisions. That's so not true. Coaches. Like, I don't understand why cheerleading coaches are not a thing. In popular culture, they exist. They're the ones who lead tryouts and decide who makes the team. Like, that's not... but yeah, I love that it's just like Chelsea checking them in, and then apparently football players were judging it, and I'm like, that's not how that would work at all. But okay.
I know, what? That was weird when she was like, "Oh yeah, Rena made the team because it was all football players." It was like,
yeah, it's like what? Doesn't make any sense. So Chelsea, who seems a bit of a bitch, I mean, Rena literally does call her one, is all like, so Caitlin, you know, like, how are you doing? You know, being like very like condescending, and kind of makes like a snide remark about Cass. And so of course, Caitlin's very upset about that. And Rena's like, you know, just drop it, like, let it go. We want to make the team. And Caitlin's like, speak for yourself. I don't really care if I make the team. But then she essentially tells her that, you know, do what Cass would do. And she was like, you know, kick their butts, like prove them wrong, go out there and be the best. And so that is what she does. She says, when I brought my cheerleading uniform home 3 days later, you know, so it's like, okay, she clearly made the team. She sees Boo, and she knows that Boo's probably going to judge her because as a professor of women's studies had fundamental problems with pageants, the beauty industry, and of course cheerleading. I knew this. Boo is pretty nice though and tells her that like, oh, you know, if it makes you happy. But again, this is where I was like, old wave of feminism, where she yeah. I was like, oh, Boo, you're like one of those, like you're a boomer hippie who like, yeah. I had a couple of women's studies professors in college who were we one day got in like a massive debate with one of our professors because it was about Beyonce's like Maxim cover shoe, and she didn't like it, and she thought that it was like she was just doing it for the male gaze and whatever. And all of us, being of the, I guess, newer wave of feminism, were like, but she decided to do it. She wanted to do it. She felt good doing it. Like, that's all that matters. And she was like, no, because she put herself out there for the male gaze or whatever. And it's like, oh, F. I'm like, and what if she wanted to? Right. Like, that's her choice. Right. And so yeah, like literally, like the entire class, like I don't know what we were supposed to be discussing that day, but it got derailed because it was just like the class versus my professor, like having this debate. And it was a great day in class, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, the second we got to this part, I was like, oh, she's one of those.
I'm like, yeah, this is very early 2000s feminism where it's like you can't be like sexual at all. You have to be like 100%. Like it is kind of like it is the antithesis of feminism, I feel like, because you're saying like you can't have ownership over your own sexuality. Like, what if you want to wear scandalous clothing and go out and sleep with a bunch of dudes? Like, that's also feminism. Sister. Yeah, like what?
Yeah, and you can tell Boo is very like a woman should go out and work, which hells yeah if she wants to, but also if she wants to stay home and not work, cool. Like, yeah. The whole thing is it should be her choice. Like, that's the point. And yeah, this is very, like you said, like the old wave was very just like not at all what it should be about, which is like it should be whatever a woman wants to do. Yeah, it was like we're gonna have rules on, you know, women and sexuality, and you know, it was very sex negative and not very sex positive. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, but yeah, they were very calling people sluts and whores and stuff, which is something that now we're like, no, we don't do that. I don't know what my husband is doing.
I was like, is that Mike crawling on the ground?
I just learned that Chili sent you a year-end recap.
Chili's, like the restaurant?
You get a year-end recap if you go to Chili's.
I thought he said a urine recap. And I was like, what is Chili's testing your urine?
I'd like to really apologize for all the editing you're going to have to do on this episode, Michael.
Chili's, sponsor us.
Okay, back to, I'm so distracted now.
I get something about a urine recap.
Yeah, urine recap.
I'm like, were they like, in my head, I'm like, wait, were they saying like what their different kinds of foods will do to your urine?
Yes, I think, oh God. I think that's what it is.
Oh, geez.
Oh, Lordy.
Where am I right now? Oh, yeah, we were talking about Boo's.
Boo, and her very bad form of feminism, which isn't even feminism, but back in 2000, we thought it was. Oh, boomer feminism. That's what I like to call it.
Yes.
But yeah, so essentially she is talking about how oopsies, I just lost my page.
I find it interesting that every day before her husband comes home from work, Caitlin's mom puts on fresh lipstick and a squirt of perfume.
Yes. I was like, hi, is it 1950s housewife? Like, what?
It kind of feels like she is stuck in that kind of, and I don't know if this is again like an early 2000s depiction of like a stay-at-home mom where she kind of has nothing but her kids and her husband. But yeah, it feels like she's not her own person like at all. She's just like a caricature of like a 1950s housewife who like has hysteria. Like if this was the 1950s, she would have gotten a lobotomy by now, probably.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, the way that she acted when cast, yeah, for sure. It would have happened. Yeah, just the way that she gets. So basically when she finds out that, you know, Caitlin has made the cheerleading team and it's like, she has a new thing to focus on now. Like it was all like Cass's schedules and her Yale schedule and whatever. And now it's like, okay, I have a purpose again. And like, that's just really sad that like her whole life is just, and again, like I said, like part of me is like, oh, like I love how much her parents are clearly invested in their kids and their kids' activities and stuff. And there's nothing obviously inherently wrong with posting a schedule on the fridge and wanting to go support her, but it's just like it's her whole life, and that is like where it's like, oh boy, that's sad. Like, and it sounds like, I mean, they mentioned earlier, you know, she's in the PTA, which again is basically is about the kids, but it sounds like she's in the junior league, so it's like, okay, like she does do something that's just for her, I guess, in a sense, but it's like I don't know if she does. I think her whole life is kind of her kids.
What is the junior league?
So I mostly only know because one of my friends is in it, and it's a little bit like to explain it, the Gilmore Girls. You know how Emily is in music, is in what is it called? The Daughters of the Revolution or whatever.
Yeah,
and
it's
like
EAR.
Meeting and getting together, and you kind of do like charitable functions around the town or whatever kind of thing. So it's like a little bit of philanthropy from my understanding. Like they will do some functions, but it's mostly just like women getting together to like get out of the house and like be together. And I think like for my friend who was in a sorority, like she was surrounded by it. I won't get into my thoughts about sororities, but for people that like them, rock on. And I, you know, met a lot of my friends from the sorority. They're all very lovely people. And I did have a good time when I visited her at the sorority house. Is it for me? No. But a lot of people, especially if you're going into certain fields, networking, it's so good for networking. So I totally understand why people do fraternities and sororities for that reason. But I think for so many years, she was in a sorority where she was constantly surrounded by other females and they were doing fun mixers and events and whatever. And so the junior league is like a sorority, but for people that are no longer in college. So it's like you get to do mixers and you get to do some philanthropy stuff, but it's really just like getting together with the ladies, which I can get down with that aspect of it.
I don't think those would be my kind of people.
That I agree. And that's why, especially in my case, like moving to Georgia, like I really don't think, like, I think they'll be very like Southern belles, like debutante kind of, which again, no shame to that, but like, I'm not that kind of a person. So I don't think we'd have much to discuss.
I need to find like my little I need to find like a little hub of weirdos to hang out with.
Yes. Can we
I just-
like make a league of that?
The League of
will come with our
Weirdos?
own name. Yeah, League of Weirdos. And it's just like people who want to talk about, you know, who want to listen to me ramble on about the TV shows I love, and like they can discuss like the anime they love or something, and we can all just be weird together. Like I
Yeah.
just don't think in Junior League they'd want to hear my like deep thoughts on Friday Night Lights, you know?
Or like your like investigation of like where Marvel is heading into the future. Like, it's like,
Yeah, I don't think they want to know that. Like, do I have theories? Yeah. Do I think they want to know that? Probably not.
probably not.
But our League of Weirdos, I think they'd be into that.
Yeah, we need to form a League of Weirdos in the Georgia, South Carolina area.
Yes, let's League of Weirdos, Southeast Edition. We're gonna make it happen. It's happening.
I like it. Back to this book that we're reading. Yeah, she does. She kind of like comes back to life with this, and Caitlin is like, wait, what? She's like not used to this because this has kind of been like Mom and Caitlin's thing, and Mom and Cass's thing. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I wish
totally.
their names are a little bit different.
I know.
And-
The fact that they're both COs is complicated.
It is complicated. But yeah, so she says like when her mom starts like really focusing on her, she's like, oh my gosh, my stomach started to hurt. She was like, I do not like this. She says, the only reason I even tried out was to do something different from Cass, but here in the end, I was following her again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is another time where she wishes Boo and Stuart were her parents. I think just because of like the like laid back, like come as you are,
Yeah.
unless you're a cheerleader, I guess, attitude that they have. And this is where we get that wonderful line.
Yeah, the
Where-
whole Barbie discussion. First of all, this Barbie discussion is funny. Like, I like that she's just like, they're all Barbie. And she's like, they're all Barbie? It's kind of boring, isn't it? And she's like, Sabrina. Like, this one just gets a name. And then she's like, what does she do? I don't know. She shops and goes out on dates. Which also is funny how, like, I guess whatever you grow up in is kind of how you play Barbie. And, like, obviously what she knows is her mom's a stay-at-home mom. And so she kind of is reflecting that, as opposed to I'm thinking of my childhood when I did Barbie, which we used to do during Christmas break, because we always would obviously get like new toys. We would get my mom had a rule during Christmas break because she was a teacher, so she was also off, so we were all off together, that we didn't have to clean up, because usually it was like at the end of the day you had to clean up your toys, right? And like you were done with those, clean it up before you go to bed. So during what we called Barbie Marathon, every Christmas break when we were little, you didn't have to clean up. So like the convenience store was set up in the dining room. The Barbie mansion was set up in the living room. Someone was camping in my sister Megan's room. And like you didn't have to clean it up because it was like a continuous storyline. We basically made a Barbie soap opera every Christmas break. And we didn't have to clean it up. So there's always a wedding. There was always a pregnancy. But like for sure, all of our Barbies had different names. They had backstories. They all had jobs. And I guess that's just because like we grew up in a household where my mom works. So obviously our Barbies work. So I just thought it was funny that like, I guess how you play Barbie is like the situation you're in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention like pop culture. I think that women in the
Yes.
workforce started getting a little bit more popular in mainstream culture, like closer to our age.
Yeah,
As
that
opposed
is for
to
sure.
like whenever this chick would have been growing up, which was a while, like in the 80s, I think.
80s, yeah. Yeah, that way she wouldn't have like seen as much of that probably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we get the lovely like which this is also funny to me. So she talks about how she automatically goes up that this Barbie, Sabrina Barbie, is in advertising, that she works in an office and sometimes has to work late. And then because she wants to get promoted so she can pay off the townhouse and the Corvette. And was like, oh, very responsible for her. And then the next thing she asks is, can she be divorced and famous for her commercials and ideas? It's like, what? Why in your kid brain is the next thing is like, could she be divorced? And that cracked me up. And then, of course, this is where we do get, again, Boo, I'm a little bit against your ideas about cheerleaders and stuff, but I like that she can be anything. And so can you. And yeah, so that's like a nice little sweet moment. But that entire conversation is just, it's very funny, but also just very sweet.
I love that your family had a quote unquote Barbie marathon where you did full Barbie
It was so
storylines
good.
for a whole
I'm
week.
telling you, like, and it's something, of course, at the time I didn't think of. In retrospect, me and my sisters are like, straight up, we made like little Barbie soap operas, didn't we? Like, we basically were like, that's what we did. And to the point, like I said, there was always a wedding. The wedding was always in the living room, the ceremony. And then the reception was always in Megan's room, which I like that we had 2 different rooms for the wedding reception. And that's always what capped off the end of Barbie Marathon. And we had a little boom box in my sister Megan's room. And we had this one pink table. I don't even know. Like, it must come from one of our Barbie houses that we had at some point. But it was reversible. And so it had like a little bouquet in one and then had like a little mirror on the other side. And for some reason, the mirror to us seemed fancier. So if you were just using the table for a normal setting, and use the bouquet side, but you'd flip it for the wedding reception because it was the fancy side. There they'd be at the table, and we'd have a dance floor, and we'd put the little boom box, and we were obsessed with the Clint Black song. So it's a lot of country music growing up. We were obsessed with this Clint Black song called Then What? And we had little choreographed dances that our Barbies would do to it. Mind you, for anyone not familiar with 90s country music, Then What is literally a song about cheating. So we had our Barbies dancing at a wedding about a song that was about cheating.
That's hilarious.
Oh, we're so lame. I love it. Well, memories.
So cute.
So yeah, here we go. We're finishing up chapter 3, which is where we will be finishing up today, which is essentially, she's saying, that for every year, for as long as I can remember, my family and Boo and Stuart have had the end of summer cookout to celebrate Labor Day. So they were kind of all like, oh, are we still going to do it? And that's when her mom was like, well, I guess Cass would have been gone anyways at Yale. So I guess we can do it. We'll keep with the tradition and whatnot. And this, of course, is when we find out, there's no surprise here, Stuart is not a big fan of sports. So they have the football game on for Dad. And Stuart's like kind of trying to act like he's interested, but he's, not really that interested in it. So I just think that's kind of cute that he like tries to keep up appearances. Oh, how's the team this year? So like be in with his dad, or her dad, I mean. So then essentially, everything's going fine. They're trying to keep up the pretense of like, oh, this is our normal Labor Day, thing. And then of course Stuart has to be like, oh, heard any news? And her dad is like, oh, no, nothing new. So then this is where, which I kind of think is sweet, Stuart's kind of trying to make him feel a little bit better. And he's like, I took Boo away from her family when she was 18. We were just kids, of course, and it was stupid. And it took years for her parents to forgive me. And so he's just kind of telling her that like, hey, like we turned out okay. Like we're happy together. Inevitably, she got back in touch with her family. And so her dad's just kind of, trying to take that little bit of hope. And so he's like, I hope you're right. And there's poor Caitlin just eating ambrosia salad like she would at the end of any other summer. But obviously it is not the way Labor Day usually goes in her family. And yeah, that's where it takes us. And we're about to embark on our next episode podcast. We are going to meet Rogerson soon, which is going to be a time. But yeah, here we are.
Yeah, this is probably going to be our last chill episode. We
For
don't
a
really
minute.
get into anything too dark.
Again, I love that like a sibling running away in comparison to the rest of the book is we're like, this is the lighter episode.
Like, this is the more chill time where we can still relax.
Oh,
Good Lord.
it's about to get difficult.
Mhm.
So everyone prepare for an emotional roller coaster. So we're happy to be back in the new year. I have some goals for the new year for this podcast, which is hopefully to reach as many fellow Sarah Dessen fans as possible and have them inducted into our little league of weirdos.
Yeah.
And we will all discuss Sarah Dessen and be happy. But yeah, so if you have been listening to us for a while and you're enjoying it and you know someone who would enjoy, please recommend us to your friends, family. Did you used to play Barbie Marathons with your sisters? Let them know about this podcast.
Yes.
Come join us on this journey. 2023, we've got a good slate of books coming up. So get
Yes.
excited, everyone.
Our goals this year, we're going to open a shop so you guys can buy some merchandise from us.
I'm
if
so
you
excited.
want. You can rep
So
Hate
excited.
Spinnerbait out in public, and you'll be out getting a little coffee, and you'll be in your little Hate Spinnerbait shirt, and someone will be like, oh my God, is that about Sarah Dessen? And then bam, another weirdo for our league. So
Yes. Please
share our
collect all
posts
the weirdos for us.
and like our posts, and you can join us on Patreon where we can discuss a little bit more in depth. I want to give a big shout out to our Patreon member Cece. She has been very active in there and she's delightful.
Yes.
So be like Cece, join us, chat with us.
Yeah.
We love to hear from you guys. And
I'm having a very good time chatting in the Discord. Once I finally, once I finally like figured out how to use it. So now I'm in there. I'm chatting. I'm cool. I'm a cool kid now.
we're vibing. Also, we really want to get Sarah Desson on here for an interview at some point, and so make sure she doesn't forget about us.
Yeah. We are going to start a Twitter campaign. We have started Twitter campaigns around this year because this year we are getting her on the show for sure.
Mhm.
That would be an absolute dream come true. I have so many questions.
Well, I'm really excited for 2023. I hope you guys are excited for 2023. I hope your dreams come true. I hope our dreams come true. And we'll see you in Lakeview for the next episode. Make sure to bring tissues and maybe a bottle of gin.
Agreed. But 10 out of 10, no notes. That, exactly that. Bye, y'all.
Bye.